Welcome to Transnational Competition Law course, and dear learner and viewer, today I am going to discuss the transnational competition law or extraterritorial application of competition law in BRICS countries. Dear learner and viewer, you can recall that we discussed in the previous lecture about the importance of the BRIC in spawning economic growth and competition by becoming a most formidable force into the global market and sharing the major economic power of the world, originally combined to five countries, and now, while giving membership to more five countries, the total strength of the BRICS becomes 10 countries and have a synergistic construction of competition law and witnessing a harmonious economic growth. We also underline the fact that how we can build a better global economics and the economies within the BRICS region, and how these countries can be having a mammoth presence in terms of wealth, in terms of GDP, and in terms of ranking among the world's top economies, and how the BRICS countries are coming to terms in real sense of the word to the competition laws and policy, its broad objective in forging a market ecosystem which has all kind of a vibrancy and robust ecosystem for competition. Having understood that, we will try to see as to how the BRICS countries, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab of Emirates, happens to be rooted in a long-term common economic interest of all the member countries. At the one hand, it endeavors to reform the global financial and economic architecture, and on the other hand, it tries to look at to strengthening the entire principles and standards of international law. Alongside, this country happens to support the complementarities of many sectors of their economies under the principles of comity and cooperation and collaborations. The BRICS countries have similar conditions of economic and social development, and that is the cementing force which have brought these countries to forge a very meaningful alliance in the world. And from that point of view, we see that the investment attractiveness of all the multinational and the international or the giant companies of the world happens to flow towards the BRICS countries. BRICS countries, now a conglomerate of the 10 countries, also wishes to predefine the necessity of increasing the cooperation between all the national competition authorities, all the national competition tribunals, and all the national competition adjudicating authorities and commissionerate and inspectorate. These countries try to restrain all kinds of violations of the competition law by the transnational companies within their borders and outside their group, and having its repercussions on the extraterritorial application and as well as transnational competition law. Having understood that, we see that the major competition challenges which are being faced by the BRICS country in shaping their regional trade developments are attributed to the fastest growing nature and the volatility of the market, and sometimes the slump and the rise of the market. In that context, dear learner and viewer, it is important to cull out from the basic BRICS report, which emphasizes on the point that there is a need for the institutional development without which the sustainable growth cannot be sustained among these countries. And it is this realization of the institutional development and the sustainable growth in the market, in the economy and the ecology, there the development and the well-being of all the countries happens to depend on the competition laws and policy as one of the key indicators. That is why we see that at the theoretical plane, the BRICS represents fifth of the global economy in just 2 decades and have all kinds of requisite potentials and essential ingredients to overtake the G7 nations. As we see that the market happens to see many ups and downs, and amidst that volatility of the market, we find greater financial risks and setbacks which have influenced the United States and Europe. In such a scenario, the BRICS has emerged in the developed markets with greater shares of the investment in their economies, which has declined adversely, and that opportunity, that crisis of the US and the European countries have been converted into an opportunity by the BRICS countries and the BRICS nation. And that's why we see that with the passage of time, the entire gross domestic product of the BRICS, because of their wisdom and their sagacity to understand the significance of the competition laws and policy, have increased to manifold. With this, what we find that the BRICS countries had challenges among the BRICS countries, challenges outside the BRICS countries, and challenges in the global market. Nonetheless, the BRICS has come of age despite all the oddities of the time. With this, dear learner, we will see that how it has made it really possible. It was made possible only by the institutional structures of the competition law in the BRICS country, wherein we find that these countries afford greater protection to the market competition. It enlarges and believes in substantial diversity. It also tried to design and redesign the institutional autonomy, and overall, the competence and the capacity of the competition authorities happens to be a case of constant improvement and refinement in BRICS countries. And for that matter, we can refer to the Brazilian and South African competition regime as a ready reckoner and a pointer that how they relatively earlier passed their competition law and their enactment on their competition law in a very timely manner and beyond time happens to have a very long run benefits in reforming and strengthening their institutional capacities, institutional strength, and institutional structures. That is why we find in Brazil the competition authorities have been recognized, not only recognized, it has been organized and reorganized and consolidated since last 50 years at so many times. Similarly, the South African Competition Commission has gradually acquired a greater degree of institutional autonomy and enforcement power. Following the same track, the Russian Competition Authority has been elevated to the rank of ministry, and there is a separate ministry on competition besides commerce and economics, and it has accorded substantial resources and manpower to exercise a multitude of competition protection and regulatory framework and the task force. In India also, we find establishment of Competition Commission of India, which has started its enforcement activity relatively recently, because once the Competition Act was put in place, the Competition Commission of India was not immediately born out of that law, but it took almost more than 5 years to have its existence. But ever since its existence, that the Competition Commission of India, on the strength of Section 32 and Section 49, have steeled the march and acquired a greater degree of technical capacity and resources which is required for the significant amount of labor, wisdom, and intelligence to see a safe passage of the competition. And lastly, the China has adopted a very unique system of multiple agencies model within the three agencies specifically devoted to handling specific forms of anti-competition conduct under the anti-monopoly law. Having understood in a very cursory manner the inherent qualities of the competition law policy enforcement, embarrassment, remedies, extraterritoriality, and transnationality of the competition law in Brazil, in Russia, in India, in China, and South Africa, we have to agree with William Kovacik, the great American antitrust scholar, that the diversity of the BRICS countries in the field of competition law enforcement provides an opportunity for the emerging competition law regime to revisit basic questions of institutional foundations and implementations of national competition law. With this, we will try to see as to what is the structure of the competition regime and the enforcement of the competition law among the BRICS nations, to see that how the test of the time they have made ample policies and have come up with very proactive and reinvigorated approach to domestic market climates, besides establishing strong linkages and meanwhile forging a stronger relationship with the giant economic power and expanded their domestic market for revival of the growth. In this context, what we find that after the economic globalization and integration, where nations are more depending on each other, and the international economy and the extraterritorial application and the transnational application of competition law is more dependent upon cooperation across all the jurisdictions of the world in general and the BRICS countries in particular, in order to address the issue of balance of trade as well as the competition. And that's why it's not surprising that the BRIC countries have many similarities in their trade practices, be that India and China have comparatively have a new competition law, but on the other hand, we find Brazil and Russia and South Africa have accomplished significant periodic legislative upgrades in their original enabling legislations on competition law. Other countries have also expanded competitive dimensions in the fold of the BRIC countries. And here it is appropriate now, dear learner and the viewer, to cull out the origin and structure of the BRIC competition legislation. And what we find that the common thread of the competition law among these countries happens to encompass an institutionally forming cooperation structure which happens to prevent very effectively anti-competitive practices, promote economic development, be that the India's Competition Commission, which coordinate and enforce the competition law, or be that the case of Coal India for the alleged abuse of dominance, or be that the US Department of Justice penalization of international auto parts cartel for price fixing and bid rigging in India, or for that matter, the issues of abuse of dominance across all the market, we find that there is some kind of a symmetry and as well as the synergy. And that's why the BRICS have tried to create a unitary monetary system to facilitate competition. Their GDP now represents 25% of the global GDP. They have also reformed international financial system, and they always try to facilitate competition regime with greater degree of institutional cooperation and committee. Therefore, what we see that the visibility of the institutional structure for competition enforcement in the BRICS countries as well as their resilience and ability to cooperate, the enforcement of the competition law shares a greater degree of the experiences, expertise, and decisive factor which can lead to a better competition law enforcement in transnational competition law and extraterritorial competition application of competition law. This is more evident from the memorandum of understanding developed by these countries as a formal ground for further development of interinstitutional cooperation of all the national competition authorities in the BRICS countries to reinforce national competition regime and to declare that the objective to foster inter-BRICS trade investment is much more dependent as to how best we apply the competition law and the enforcement in matters of national, in matters of regional, in matters of transnational, in matters of extraterritorial application of competition law. With this, dear learner, I conclude and I hope that the foundational perspective of the BRICS in relation to the variety and the diversity of the laws and the policies, the competition regime and enforcement, the institutional structure of the BRICS countries, and the major challenges and the issue of the regional development in the BRICS nation will be having an addition to our understanding in matters of extraterritorial application in the course of transnational application or transnational competition law. With this, I thank you and I wish you a happy learning.